There are two components to the war effort. One of them is obviously, as you rightly pointed out at the beginning of the show, is to dismantle and destroy Hamas as a governing authority. And the second is to bring home the hostages. So when we weigh up those two goals, we are currently in a phase of bringing home hostages. So as far as we are concerned, we are on defensive lines, defensive positions, taking the necessary steps to be protected where in the northern Gaza Strip.
To the Israel Defense Forces spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, who's on the line. Good afternoon to you, Lieutenant Colonel.
Good afternoon, Kathy.
So we've heard from Catherine there, the sort of latest state of play. Can you confirm that the release of the Palestinian detainees will happen imminently?
I can say that the state of Israel as a whole, as a country, as a society, is basically holding its breath as we see the images live on television this evening here in Israel. Just by the staff in my office that I can look around and see all glued to the television to see what is actually happening as it unfolds. Of course, we have seen the announcements both of the International Committee of the Red Cross, and we will, once we have confirmation, we will make our own announcement when the hostages have been transferred into Israel, into Israeli hands.
Right, so it could be a little while before we hear about the Palestinian detainees then.
Over the course of the day, we've been making our preparations to welcome, to receive the hostages, both from a transportation perspective, but also medical and support staff. As Catherine rightly pointed out, psychological situation, health situation, these all need to be taken into careful consideration. And only after that will they be transferred to the hospitals and to their families. With regard to the prisoner release, I have not got the information. That is actually conducted by the Israel Prison Service and not by the IDF.
Right.
But indeed, it is part of the agreement, a part of the framework in order to bring the hostages home.
Okay, and there has been some opposition within the Israeli cabinet to this deal and fears that Hamas might use this time to regroup and rebuild. How will you prevent that?
So I would say, first of all, that there are two components to the war effort. One of them is obviously, as you rightly pointed out at the beginning of the show, is to dismantle and destroy Hamas as a governing authority. And the second is to bring home the hostages. So when we weigh up those two goals, we are currently in a phase of bringing home hostages. So as far as we are concerned, we are on defensive lines, defensive positions, taking the necessary steps to be protected where in the northern Gaza Strip, to make sure that we are capable in order to turn around any potential attack that Hamas could conduct against our forces on the ground in breach.
Right, but those two goals, as you set them out, are essentially in conflict, aren't they? And, there are those who see this deal as a victory for Hamas. They now hold the fate of the remaining hostages, nearly 200, in their hands. And were it not for those hostages, you would have destroyed Hamas already, flattened Gaza.
And on the other hand, if it were not for Israel's military force mobilizing, those hostages would not be released. So I think there is, I believe, and we understand the situation as one where the defense offensive, the abilities of armed forces to mobilize extensively against Hamas in the last 7 weeks now, has immensely affected and influenced Hamas's decision to release hostages. And indeed, there is a process now that is underway. We are prepared to mobilize, but we're also prepared to take the risk of holding off our positions, of holding our fire in order to bring home Israeli civilians.
Right, and that could happen again and again, couldn't it? That Hamas will bring you to the negotiating table so you can secure the remainder of the hostages, and you'll hold fire while you do that.
So we have this framework agreement that is supposed to go through the next few days, and there's a potential there for extension if they continue to release hostages. Who are these hostages? It's men, women, and children. It's the elderly. It's soldiers. They all need to be released, every last one of them. So it is indeed in their power, if they want to try and manage their own situation, to release the hostages. But in the end of the day, as the government has announced and the defense minister announced earlier today, Defense Minister Gallant, we are still at war with Hamas, and we intend to continue this war.
I'll come back to that in just a moment, but you talked about the possibility for the ceasefire being extended. 10 days has been suggested. Do you think that is a realistic possibility, or could it even be longer?
I think, from the military's perspective, hope is not a method. We are taking every day independently. I think we are now hoping to see the hostages released today, and we will plan for tomorrow, for the day after, and the day after that. I don't want to try and jump to any conclusions beyond that, and I'd rather be very focused on the mission at hand, the immediate mission, and those that need to be brought home.
But you would like potentially for the ceasefire to be extended so that you can preserve the lives of those remaining 200 hostages who aren't covered by this deal?
We would like that all the hostages come home safe and sound.
Yeah, and some of that is in your hands, isn't it? If you go back to the negotiating table, extend that ceasefire, that is a possibility.
No, the possibility is all in Hamas's hand. If they want, they can release them all. If they choose to drag it out, as you pointed out, that they could potentially do so. It is a challenge. Of course, according to the framework agreement that was decided upon, they will have that influence. We will be prepared. The military will be prepared to mobilize if that doesn't materialize into anything beyond substance. The emotional roller coaster that Hamas is trying to exert on the Israeli public and on Israeli society, and specifically on the families of the 240 Israelis and the foreign nationals that were abducted by the organization, is unbearable. I can't imagine the pain that they are going through. So indeed, this is a reality where Hamas are a governing authority of the Gaza Strip. We've been saying that from day one.
Right.
They have the power. They have utilized the power. They have abused that power of government and put our region into this dire situation. They need to bring back the hostages, and they need to bring them back now. Okay,
we just had confirmation. Qatari Foreign Ministry is saying that 39 women and children have been released from Israeli jails. Is that the first of many, presumably, and over the coming days we'll see more?
Well, there is. I've not received that information at this time.
It's just breaking right now. Your response to that, if you would.
I'm just trying to get it update on my my mobile. I have nothing to say at this time on this subject. Of course, Israel will fulfill its side or part of the framework. We will maintain our operational pause on the ground, and the prisoners that have been agreed upon will be released. The hostages need to come home, though.
Right, and what now for Gaza? Because we've seen what's happened to the north of Gaza. Is that what awaits the south too?
So we're in a state of a pause. So will that materialize into further operations? Probably.
Your defense minister has said 2 months more fighting.
The government has instructed us to be prepared. We are making the operational plans to move our operations forward. We have not completed our operations in the north of the Gaza Strip. There are still areas that have been hardly touched by the IDF activities and by our ground forces on the ground. And indeed, the ground forces are stationary, are in their positions in the northern Gaza Strip. If and when we have to reignite our mobilization, then we will do so.
But what happens to the people in the south now? You've moved them from the north to the south. Some of them are trying to return to the north because, they want to see what's happened to their homes. But so what happens to those people in the south if what awaits them is a similar fate to those in the north?
Kathy, we have, in course of this framework, have requested and demanded, in according to the framework agreement, that people do not return to the north because of the heavy military presence there.
But what happens in the south? If you say that you're determined to have your defense minister has said 2 months more of fighting. So what happens in the south of Gaza?
And indeed, that the route from north to south continues to be open for evacuation. And indeed, as we see the military operation move forward, we will continue to seek out Hamas wherever they are hiding.
Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, thank you very much for joining us today. Better news from the conflict, and let's hope that continues. Thank you very much.